This is a Rabble Podcast Network show. New voices in your head. It's Radio Free Radio.
You're listening to Red Eye on Vancouver Cooperative Radio, CFRO 102.7 FM.
How would you rate global warming on a list of the most important issues we face? Most likely it's pretty high. If you're a climate scientist or an environmental activist, it may have been that way for a long time. But in the last few years, global warming is suddenly on everyone's mind. Al Gore's film An Inconvenient Truth has helped convince vast numbers of people that global warming is important, but it also is laying out solutions. David Noble says we're being presented with a limited, pro-corporate alternative to global warming denial that is undermining grassroots movements that provide more social context. David Noble is a professor of history at York University, and he's joined me by phone. Good afternoon, David.
Good morning to you.
A few years back, global warming was of interest to scientists and activists. How has such a huge shift to the center of everyday discussion taken place?
Well, what I'm suggesting is that we have been bombarded by two campaigns over the last a decade and a half. One, which Al Gore and others have taken aim at, is, as you mentioned, the campaign of the so-called deniers. That is the big oil and gas companies arguing that global warming is not real, that the science is very doubtful, et cetera, et cetera. That's a campaign that we're familiar with now. But there's been another campaign that has really received very scant attention, of which Al Gore's work is a part, and that is a campaign to convince people that global warming is not only real, and with a focus on greenhouse gas emissions, particularly CO2, but also is a crisis, that there are suggestions of apocalypse, and that we should really put everything aside and focus on this. What I'm suggesting is that message has been reaching us by every means possible, and that's what has alerted people to this issue as never before. And again, what I'm suggesting is both campaigns are corporate propaganda campaigns, and that we have been subject in the last several years, the Gore's film and book being only a part of it, to a massive campaign which has been orchestrated since the end of the 90s and has really gained steam in the last couple of years by a group primarily of investment bankers from Wall Street and some very of the largest multinational corporations. So that there's a split among the corporate elite. And this is not new historically. There are those who are taking the strategy of denial, and there are those who are taking a strategy of hijacking the issue of climate change for the purpose of profit. And Al Gore, very much in the midst of this, he's an investment guru, has his own company, Generation Investment Management, and they're out to make money off of this hysteria.
Now, we hear quite a lot about the first camp that you talk about, the denial and doubting one, but the second one, how did that evolve? You know, where did it come from?
Well, it really seems to take shape in the wake of Kyoto, around 1997, 1998. There are a couple of things happening. One is it is the height of what was called by the press the anti-globalization movement, and this, or the global justice movement as it was called by the participants. And this was a movement that was really sparked by the uprising in Chiapas in 1994 against free trade. What this movement focused on was the ravages and predations of multinational corporations. The unregulated market and free trade was the center of it, as well as it was also a challenge to the authority of science and the idea that we can be saved by technology, so that the anti-globalization movement not only focused on the corporations and their agencies, the World Trade Organization, International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, etc., but also on the mythology of our culture that we can be that a panacea awaits us if we just allow the market to do its magic, allow science and technology to bring in all the goodies, including genetically modified food, etc. This movement really arose in response to that whole thing, which can be summed up in a word, which was the mantra of the late 80s and early 90s, globalization. That's why it was called the anti-globalization movement. So what happens around this period is also the Kyoto Conference, which was followed up on some earlier developments at the Rio Conference in 1992. And a part of the corporate elite decided to take another tack rather than denial, and to try to essentially hijack the climate change issue, and as a way of subverting and undermining the anti-globalization movement, and restoring faith in the corporation, restoring faith in the market, restoring faith in science, and restoring faith in technological fixes to all of our problems. So around 1997, 1998, some large corporations led by some of the giants like BP, DuPont, and others broke away from the earlier coalition really coalesced around what was called the Global Change Coalition, the deniers, to launch this other strategy. By 1998, they had formed a number of organizations together with investment bankers, Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, and they coalesced in a number of, I'll call them front organizations. I won't go into all the details, but if you could refer your readers to my article called The Corporate Climate Coup, which is available online. You can just Google it. All the details are there. So a number of front organizations were set up. And over the course from around 1998 to the present, I document about 6 or 7 of those organizations. And Gore was very much a part of these organizations. And the aim was to foster the idea that global warming, and especially increase of CO2 concentration among greenhouse gases, was causing global warming, and that, again, all of the concerns of the anti-globalization movement could now or should now be abandoned. We should follow the lead of these corporations, General Electric, DuPont, the aluminum companies, the utilities companies, the oil companies like BP, like Sunoco, Suncor, Texaco. Follow their lead and also heed the alleged consensus of science, and also subsidize in every possible way through our taxes the technological fixes, whether it's be photovoltaics or biofuels or something called nuclear, and let the market, and this is the key mantra, let the market fix this through carbon trading and the like, and that will solve this crisis. But the main point was, put everything aside. This is the only thing we should be concerned about.
Do you think they were successful in co-opting grassroots movements there?
Yes, well, for a number of reasons. First of all, a lot of environmental organizations understood that this saturation with this propaganda was a bonanza for them, so that the environmental movement organizations could cash in on this, and have been cashing in on this. That is, they've been able to secure a lot more funding. They've been able to see an issue that some have been concerned about for some time now center stage, which they thought was a very positive development.